Hey there everybody, Scotia here with quite a fun video for today, and one that I'm very excited and interested to start getting into fully for the first time, because as I'm sure many of you already know, we know that Mortal Kombat 12 is happening at some point this year. And I didn't cover it on my channel because honestly, by the time the news broke and I heard about it, I think most, if not every, major fighting game news channel out there had already covered what had happened and how this was announced in great detail, from the details that were there. And to be honest, I just didn't really see how I could really add to anything. At the time, I was very excited by the news, but, that was pretty much it. I just didn't really see the point of making a video of me just being like, hey, this leaked in a really weird way, but I'm excited. So, in case you missed this news somehow, basically Mortal Kombat 12 got leaked by, I think, Warner Brothers themselves. I think I remember there was a investors call for Warner Brothers going on at the time, and somebody from the company itself was talking to this guy about, stuff that was coming up in the next couple of quarters or something for this year. And this Warner Brothers employee basically just openly said that Mortal Kombat 12 was coming and that it was, it was aiming for this year with, big sales projections, which is, obvious because it's Mortal Kombat. But yeah, it was a pretty interesting way to find out, that this was the next game that NetherRealm Studios are working on, as the next game that they're releasing, and that it's coming out this year. I do feel bad for the team, but it wasn't that much of a surprise. I think a lot of us were expecting it. There's been a lot of rumours and theories and leaks and all this stuff going on for quite a long time now that was pointing towards Mortal Kombat 12. I think I even mentioned it in, the Game Awards video I did before the Game Awards itself actually happened, where I was saying, here's the rumours so far about MK12, I really hope it shows up, and it didn't. But we're probably going to hear about it very soon in the next couple of months. Probably E3, I reckon around E3 time, so about June-ish or July-ish. But yeah, I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of MK. I have been for almost all my life. It was one of the first games I ever remember playing was Mortal Kombat Trilogy on the PS1. Yeah, big fan of MK. I've really got into the series with MK Deception. And yeah, I'm very excited, and, as much as I do feel bad for fans of Injustice or, or people who wanted NetherRealm to do something new next, I'm very glad we're getting another Mortal Kombat, straight away. Well, not straight away, I mean, we pretty much are on the normal schedule. This is the year where we probably would have got the next Mortal Kombat, but, it feels a lot sooner because we never got anything in 2021, which is when we probably should have got the next Injustice. But yeah, I'm very interested in seeing why, things have taken so long with no news or no game from NetherRealm, but that's a whole topic for another day when we eventually, see the game and find out what it actually is. But for this video, this is basically just going to be me going through a couple of characters and just kind of going here's why I think these characters should be in the next Mortal Kombat game. So I know the title of this video says that these are 10 characters that need to be in MK12, but that was pretty much clickbait on my part, so I guess sorry for that. But yeah, I don't think these characters need to be in the game. I very much hope they're in the game, and I'd be very much bummed if they weren't in the game. But I think outside of Scorpion and Sub-Zero and maybe Raiden and maybe a couple of other characters, I don't think many characters are needed for an MK game. But that's neither here nor there. So there's no real specific order for this. I kind of just listed them randomly, except for the first two, because those are probably the first two that first came to mind when I started thinking about this video. But yeah, don't put too much thought into the order of things, because I didn't. But with that out of the way, I'm just going to get right into it. So here is number 1.
We are many, you are but one.
So if you know me outside of this channel and Twitter, so in places like Discord, etc., this will not be a surprise to you. I am a massive fan of Ermac. He has been my favourite Mortal Kombat character pretty much, not since the beginning, very close to the beginning, but ever since I got into the series proper with Mortal Kombat Deception, I have been a massive fan of Ermac. I really, really love the character a lot. So for this pick, I'm honestly being biased here, and, I'm not ashamed of that. I have my favourites. I have my favourites in every fighting game series that I would like to see over other characters that would probably, deserve the slot more, I guess. But, by far and away, Ermac is my most wanted character for MK12. I was very disappointed he wasn't in MK11, but honestly, I was kind of overall fine with it. And okay, so this needs a bit more of an actual explanation first, because there's layers to how I feel about Ermac in MK11, because I'm fine he missed the game, that's not a problem, I can get over that, and I did. My issue was how they treat him in MK11, because if you know, or if you don't know, I'll explain it either way. But in MK11, they had the big, crypt mode, basically kind of like an action-adventure game almost. And as you go through the crypt in all these different places on Shang Tsung's island, things happen and, you get items that help you progress and do stuff like that. And at some point, when you get to the bottom of the pit, Ermac falls from the sky and is impaled right in front of you. And that's it, he just dies. The only real screen time he has in MK11, he just dies. And you know, I found the funny side of it, even being a fan of Ermac for so long. You know, some people were really pissed off about that, and I understand it, and part of me was kind of like, you know, a bit like, oh, okay, you know, whatever. But I saw the humour in it, and I got over it. What bothered me, though, is that they gave Ermac a brand new design, completely different to what he had in MKX. He looked fantastic, one of his best designs in all honesty, and then they just never did anything with it. And that's what annoyed me, because to go to the effort of designing this character, giving him a new, you know, a completely new look, a completely new model, like obviously I think his face model was, I think, Liu Kang's. I think it was like Revenant Liu Kang, so, you know, wasn't entirely different, but like his clothing was completely new, like that was made from scratch. For like a cameo of him just dying, that was really weird to me. And I'm still like, you know, tinfoil hat theory, I'm still convinced he was planned to be playable at some point, whether it was DLC or base roster, but at some point I fully believe he was going to be in the game as a playable character, but then he got scrapped for whatever reason, which, you know, again, is a really big shame, because I like 11 a lot. Not my favourite MK game, but, you know, I enjoy playing it, and I enjoy the graphics and the characters and all the designs and stuff like that. So it was a bummer, you know, to have Ermac right there but not be able to play him. But in some sense, I felt satisfied because I was at least able to see what Ermac would look like in MK11. And, you know, not often you get that when it comes to, you know, certain characters, where it's like when a character you want just doesn't make it at all, isn't playable, isn't seen. It's a bummer, because you're like, oh man, I really want to picture what he would have looked like if he was in that game. But with Ermac and MK11, it's like, oh no, I know what he would have looked like, because he's right there. And there's models, and there's concept art, and there's, you know, things out there online that people recreated from his model and his files in the game. That's like, okay, this is how Ermac would have looked in MK11. So in that sense, I was fine with it, and I was like, you know, I made my peace. But for MK12, fuck all that, I want him in the game. And I know I'm being selfish there, and I don't really care. I love the character. I was willing to let him go in MK11, but you know what? He got screwed over, he had a really kind of shitty death in that game, and it was funny, and haha, you know, but you know what? The joke was played, it's done now. At least give Ermac fans something to kind of make up for that. So yeah, bottom line, 100%, I want this character in MK12. I'll be very, very disappointed if he's not. Not the end of the world, I'll still get the game, I'll still support it, I'll still cover it on this channel, but I'll be very upset if he's not in the game, especially after all the bullshit they did with him in MK11. On top of that though, I would really like to just see him kind of like... The word I want to use is redeemed, but I don't know if it's the right word, because the way things go, I know someone is going to very much disagree with what I'm about to say, and that's fine. You know, opinions are opinions, everybody has their own, and that's fine, and I have no problem with that. But for me, I really did not like how they did Ermac and MKX. I respected the direction they took with him. I, you know, appreciate that they tried to do something different, and I think as a concept, having kind of like Ermac be decaying and all that, I think was a really cool idea in terms of like, how would Ermac be with all those souls in him for like decades without anybody really there to like regenerate him and keep him going. And I think that was a great idea. My problem was that there was really no alternative to that, because personally I think the best Ermac has ever looked, and I think will probably ever look, is MK9. I adore MK9 Ermac in terms of playstyle, but mainly his design in MK9 is so good. I love that design so much, and to go from that and then in the next game have this like decaying thing again was fine, but there was just no alternative. It was like every other costume Ermac had in that game was just decaying, and I thought that was a real shame, and it really kind of like put me off the character, because yeah, I liked the idea of it, but at the same time I didn't want to really play as my character decaying and, you know, shrunken and like look like a ghoul. Like, again, interesting, and I would have used that as a costume if that was an option, but because that was the only option, it just rubbed me the wrong way. So in that sense, yeah, I wouldn't mind if they did that again, if they tried the decaying thing again. But if they're going to do that, like, just give me an option to not have it and have more of like an MK9 type design where he's, you know, normal and like has the full like wrapping over his face and all that. But yeah, that's kind of like where I stand on MKX Ermac. I thought he was fun to play, but like I just didn't like looking at him, and all of his costumes was the case for me. Like, in regards to like, I just hated looking at Ermac in that game because I just didn't like it. And yeah, I thought it was a shame that they didn't offer an alternative, because other characters in MKX had their MK9 designs, like Scorpion and Johnny Cage, and I remember being really disappointed of kind of like looking at it and being like, so they get theirs, but Ermac, you know, can't get his. Yeah, there was just no alternative. It was like you had to just put up with like mummified, kind of like rotting away, decaying Ermac, and like if you liked that, then great. And like I said, that's what I mean by like people would disagree with me, because some people loved that, and, you know, all respect to them, and like I'm glad they enjoyed that. But for me, who was definitely more of a fan of MK9 Ermac and MK Deception Ermac, yeah, I just was not a fan. I was very disappointed how he was in that game. And, you know, again, that's a shame. Like, when you really like a character so much and you've liked the character for so long and they come back and that's such a great feeling, but you just don't like how they look, it's really kind of a bit of a gut punch. But, you know, the thing with MK11 is that, like, you know, with the whole kind of like past skins and then the new skins and, you know, the current timeline and the past timeline, I'm sure Ermac would have had that option, and if they continue that in MK12, which I hope they do, then that wouldn't be a problem, because you would have past Ermac as a skin, and then, you know, mummified, decaying Ermac as a different skin. And if they did it like that, like I said, I would have had no problem with Ermac, but yeah, as it was, just wasn't a fan. But that's pretty much it, really. I just really like the character. He's my favourite, hands down, no question. He's been my favourite for years and years and years now. And yeah, I just want my guy back, you know? There's nothing else really to it. That's pretty much it.
Where there is smoke, there is fire.
So for number 2, this is a character that I'm honestly shocked hasn't come back sooner. Like, in all honesty, I'm baffled he wasn't in MK11 as DLC, because at the time, and even now, he seems like such a highly requested character, and they've just not done it. But for this entry, it is Human Smoke. And I'm going with Human Smoke specifically because, in all honesty, I've never been a big fan of like Cyber Smoke. I think the idea is interesting, and I think the concept and the story behind it is very cool, and I like that storyline. But I don't know, I just always thought Human Smoke was more interesting. I always thought he was a cooler character. And the big reason I feel this way is because of MK9. And the most interesting thing about Human Smoke is that he was gone for like a very long time. Like, in every other game that he was in post MK3, like, oh no, I mean even MK2, he was always the cyborg, or when he was in Deception, he was a really weird smoke cloud, which I still don't really understand what that was about. But the thing with Human Smoke was that he was in MK Trilogy, and that was his first like actual like playable appearance. He was in MK2 as like Human Smoke, but you could only fight him. I don't think you could actually fight as Human Smoke in MK2. Probably with cheats and emulators and stuff like that you can. But his first like properly playable appearance was in MK Trilogy. He might have been in Ultimate. He could have been in Ultimate. If he was in Ultimate, then he was in Ultimate. But as far as my memory goes at the moment, I'm pretty sure his first actual appearance was in MK Trilogy. But then after MK Trilogy, he was just gone for like a long time. I think like 15 years. So fun fact if you don't know. So I was born in 1996, which is the year that MK Trilogy came out. And when MK9 came out in 2011, that game came out around about my 15th birthday. So yeah, it's about 15 years between MK Trilogy and MK9 that Human Smoke, like as the character, as the ninja, was gone. And now we're coming up to about 12 years since MK9, you know, from MK9 in 2011 to now 2023 with MK12. So we're almost coming up to like the same amount of time since MK Trilogy to 9, and now 9 to 12. Like, we're coming up to the same amount of time that Human Smoke has been gone, which is mad. Like, that's actually kind of crazy when you really think about it. Like, we've almost had the exact same gap in time since his appearances. But also for me, it's kind of crazy because, like, my birth to MK9 feels like a very long time, and to think that we've almost matched that already is kind of like, that's a terrifying thought for me. But yeah, existential crisis out of the way. I just really want this character back. I think he was so cool in MK9, and I'm like, it's that thing where like, I remember when Human Smoke leaked for the first time in MK9, and I think it was his character select image. I'll have it on the screen now, and like, people went like ballistic because he looked really weird, and at the time I was like, what have they done? Because his hair looked like it was almost like straight up, kind of like almost like Super Saiyan-ish, and it looked really weird. But then you actually saw it in game, and the thing about Smoke in MK9 is that I really like the idea of how they designed Smoke in MK9, like his base costume with the hair. It's just a shame that MK9 and that whole era, hair looked like shit. Like everyone who had long hair in MK9 looked awful. Like the hair was like, they just couldn't do hair back then, like especially like long hair. But now in like 2023, I think that, you know, it's worth going back to that concept and doing Smoke with the long hair again, because I get what they were trying to do. Because if you see it in Smoke's ending, basically what they're trying to do is they were trying to have the long hair kind of like end in like a wispy smoke effect, but they just couldn't do it in 2011. Like they just didn't have the graphics or whatever to like make it look right. But I think now in 2023 they could absolutely nail that design and make it what it was meant to be back then. So that's like one of the main reasons, funny enough, that I really want Human Smoke back, is because I want them to try that hair again, because I think now they would do a really good job at it. But all in all, I don't know, I just like Human Smoke more. I think the whole idea of, because that was one of the big things with MK9, was that, like, they were rebooting the series, they were redoing MK1, 2, and 3, but they were always saying, like, oh, but there's going to be big changes this time, like, it's not going to play out the same way. And there were so many theories. I was on forums at the time. I used to be on, like, MK Online forum, if anyone remembers that, or still goes there. I think that place is still active. But I used to be on there when MK9 was coming out, and it was like, people had so many theories about what they thought was going to change in the timeline. But the one thing that always was, like, a constant theory that people had was that when it came to Smoke and Sub-Zero, because in the original games, Smoke got kidnapped by the Lin Kuei and became a cyborg, which is how you got Cyber Smoke. People thought that basically the roles were going to get swapped and that Smoke was going to stay human, but Sub-Zero was going to become the cyborg, which is what happened. And I loved that twist. When I first played MK9, that blew my mind. Like, I thought that was so cool that they did that. And, like, I really like Cyber Sub-Zero. Like, obviously, he was never going to stick around, but I remember being really disappointed in MKX when they just completely, like, got rid of that and then only brought it back with Triborg. But just, like, having that, the whole, like, switcheroo and the whole twist, and then having Human Smoke back for the first time in, like, 15 years, like, that was such a cool moment. And then, like, they've just done nothing with him since. Like, obviously he was a Revenant in MKX, and he had, like, a cameo in that game. And they did the whole tease with him, like, being called, what was it, like, Anenra, I think it was? And then that never went anywhere. And then he just wasn't in MK11 at all. Like, they did this whole thing with bringing back Human Smoke and then just did nothing with him. I think that's so disappointing, and, like, I just really wish that they would give him another chance. And yeah, like, in general, I think most people would rather have Human Smoke back. Obviously, some people prefer Cyber Smoke, and they're fine with that. They're valid for thinking that and, like, wanting that. But I think given we only had, like, Cyber Smoke in MKX via Triborg, I don't know. I mean, in an ideal world, I would do both. Best of both worlds. But I think if I had to choose one, 100% I would rather have Human Smoke. Like I said, mainly like for those two reasons. One, because it's been so long since we had him, and two, because I think they could really nail his design that they were trying to do in MK9 like better now. But yeah, so that's my like case for Human Smoke, I guess. It'd be interesting to see what like other people think about that. But from my knowledge and what I remember at the time, like he seems like a very highly requested character. But yeah, they just never did anything with him after 9, which is a real shame. But hopefully 12 fixes that.
Fatality.
So for this next choice, I think a lot of you are going to be very confused as to why I've gone with this character, and I'm going to try my best to explain it, because honestly, I barely, if ever, see this character get mentioned when it comes to people like wanting certain characters back in like MK12 or like other games. But for number 3, I'm going with Kai. And like I said, for many people, you'll be very confused as to why I'm going with Kai, and I think for even some of you, you would be probably going, who the hell is Kai? And I completely understand that, because Midway and NetherRealm have really just done nothing with this character, and I think that's a shame, because I think Kai has potential, and that's going to be a common theme that you're going to be hearing a lot throughout the rest of this video, is potential. And I say this because the thing with NetherRealm is that when it came to the 3D era of the series, which is from MK4 to MK Armageddon, they introduced a lot of characters, and not a lot of them were hits. And that was for a variety of reasons. Some of them just didn't look like hits, some of them didn't act like hits, some of them, could have been hits but were just not handled well by Midway, so they kind of just got, ignored and moved on from. But to me, Kai was always one of those characters where he could have been a hit if Midway did more with him, and they just never did. So for those that don't know, Kai was a character that debuted in MK4, and he was basically, I don't know if he was ever like pushed as such, but he was basically kind of like the first like next generation like White Lotus Shaolin monk. And personally, I think the whole concept of like an African American Shaolin monk is really cool. I think you can do a lot with that concept, especially the whole kind of like clash between, someone from the US is now a monk in this like ancient Chinese group of warriors. And I think that's a very interesting concept, and you can really play with that kind of juxtaposition between somebody from a very kind of like metropolitan setting, because I think Kai's from Detroit. I may be wrong on that, but someone from Detroit then goes to be a monk in China. I think that's a really cool idea that you can really explore with, and they just never really did. And, in Midway's defense, Kai in MK4 was probably one of the more forgettable newcomers. He never really expressed a lot of personality from what I remember. I think MK4 for me personally is probably the MK game I've played the least. I completely skipped it when I was a kid. I went from MK Trilogy to then not playing it until I think I may have played Deadly Alliance, but I didn't properly get back into the series until Deception, like I said earlier in the video. But yeah, like, he just kind of never really stood out, and it's a shame because I think they could have made him stand out, but yeah, they just never really did a lot with him, which I think was a shame. But I think if you could like bring him back and make him a bit more interesting and kind of like add these layers to him, like I said, you know, the whole like American guy goes from the city of Detroit to then like a temple in China. Like, I think that's a really cool idea. But it's that thing with Kai where, yeah, there was just never really a lot to him to begin with. I actually also had the idea like years ago to like, when it came to like the combat kids in MKX, which was like Cassie, Jackie, Takeda, and Kung Jin, I always was like, oh man, it'd be really cool if Kai kind of like took Kung Jin's like spot in that group. I have nothing against Kung Jin. I think he's a pretty interesting character in his own right, and I would love to see him again. But I just liked the idea of having like an older character, like an already established character, kind of like mixing in with that group who, again, has experience, is pre-established, but is still new. Like, you can kind of sell him as a new character almost, even though he's from a previous game. But, you know, I'm fine with how that group ended up being. But that was just one idea I had for Kai in terms of like reintroducing him into the series. But yeah, I think in general MK4 had quite a few characters that, you know, could have had potential, but just the way they were handled, like, it kind of didn't really go well for them. I think Jarek is another one. I know people hate Jarek, and I understand, because Jarek is literally a Kano skin, and that was kind of a recurring theme with MK4 in terms of like, here's a character from like the previous MK games. Oh wait, no, we've got too many returning characters. Quick, put a new skin on them. Okay, here's a new character, and it's just an old character, but they just look new. And that wasn't necessarily the case with Kai, because Liu Kang was already in the game, and I think Kai had his own fighting style. But in the same way, it was like, because Liu Kang was already there, and because Liu Kang was very much not, you know, they never took the protagonist role away from Liu Kang in that game. Like, he was still the main character of the series, even though, you know, obviously not the most popular, but like, he was still the main character of the overall plot, and the one that like fought Shinnok. But like, you just had Kai there, and it was like, so you had like the main character who's a Shaolin monk, and then you got this new character who's like the next generation of the Shaolin monks, but he doesn't really do anything. And at the end of the game, Raiden's like, oh, here's my staff. You know, it's just like, they could have done more. I'm not saying make Kai the main character. They could have, and I think that would have been a very interesting move if they had done that. But you could have at least kind of like made Kai a bit more integral to the main plot. Maybe have him and Liu Kang fight Shinnok, even if, you know, Kai gets completely bodied by Shinnok and Liu Kang has to save him. At least he's there, and at least he's doing something. As it is now, Kai just never really did anything. But yeah, like, I understand why he became irrelevant, because to be fair, there just wasn't much there in general. But I think, you know, if they gave him the potential of giving him another chance, I think they could have done something with him. But, you know, I guess we'll see. Like I say, I do not think Kai will actually be in MK12. Like, I said the video clickbait. I know, like characters that need to be in. Kai probably won't be in the game. If he was, I'd love it, but I just don't expect it to happen. And, you know, I think it's a shame, but I understand it. But yeah, so that's all I can really say for Kai at the moment, so I'll just leave number 3 there.
Havik wins. Fatality.
So for number 12, we have a character that I'm pretty sure will probably be in MK12 at some point, whether it's DLC or not, but is also a character that I am also like sort of surprised hasn't shown up yet. But number 4 is Havik, and yeah, Havik's a very interesting character, and I honestly feel in a way that like he's the next kind of like, I guess, indie darling or indie favorite. I know indie isn't the right word for it, but it's the only thing I can like really think of at the moment. But in the sense of like the next 3D era character that probably has the best chance of making it, just due to kind of like a mixture of popularity and like process of like elimination. And I think Fujin was the previous one. Fujin was a pretty highly requested character for a very long time. Like, even back in MK9 days, I remember some people asking for him, but it really ramped up with MKX, like even more so when he had that cameo in the game. And he didn't come back until 11, but you know, like Fujin was a popular pick that a lot of people wanted to see back. Same with Frost in a way, not as much as Fujin, but like people wanted Frost back a lot. And now that those two are out the way, I think Havik is probably the next likeliest option. Havik is a sick character, he's so cool. Like, The whole Order Realm and Chaos Realm aspect of MK Deception is honestly one of my favourite aspects of the entire series. It is criminal that neither of those realms have been explored since MK Deception. I'll talk more about Order Realm in a minute, but like the whole thing with Chaos Realm is so fascinating, and just wandering through it in MK Deception is so cool. Such a fantastic like designed area, and the whole backstory behind it, and the whole like all the like denizens of that realm are just so insane, and Havik is like the perfect like representation of that. And that's why I think like if they ever do something with the Chaos Realm again, Havik 100% needs to be there. But even if they don't really do anything with Chaos Realm specifically, Havik should just be there in general. He's such a fun character, like such an interesting concept, such a sick design. Like it really is criminal they've never done anything more with him post Deception. I mean, he's had cameos in like MK9 and all that, but like, man, they're just sitting on a treasure trove of like potential with Havik and the Order Realm and the Chaos Realm, and they just don't do anything with it, similar to Kai, but like on a much bigger scale. Like people want Havik back. Like I saw his name show up so much towards the end of MK11, especially with the second season pass they did with no, sorry, not the second one, the third one with Rain, Melina, and Rambo. Like he was heavily rumored to be the fourth character in that pack, and obviously it never happened. But like, yeah, 100% I think Havik will be in MK12 at some point. He seems like the most obvious pick to choose from the 3D era. But yeah, such a cool character. Like, him and Chaos Realm in general should absolutely deserve more love. And I hope, you know, with MK12 they actually give them more love. But yeah, nothing else I can really say about Havik, to be honest. Like, I think most people already know the case they want to make for him. Like, you just have to look at Havik really and see his moves and how he animates with like the limbs and all that to see like how fun he would be in like a new MK game. But Havik being a number 4 links closely to the number 5 pick, who I'm going to get into now.
Hotaru wins. Fatality.
So now that we've just talked about Havik, it's time to talk about the next character, which is number 5, and that is Hotaru. And Hotaru is an interesting one because Hotaru is not as popular as Havik, like nowhere near as close. Like Havik was, even back in the Deception days, was just a very popular and well-liked character, like almost like straight away, whereas Hotaru just wasn't. And in a way, I feel like that was the point. Like Hotaru was intentionally like designed to not be as immediately interesting and captivating as Havik, because, you know, Hotaru is from the Order Realm. But the thing with Hotaru is like he has the potential, I think, to be a very interesting and I think just flat out like a very good villain. Not like a major villain, but like a minor antagonist, I think would be really cool. Like, kind of imagine something almost similar to Geras in MK11, where it was like, imagine Hotaru just keeps coming back throughout the story. Like, he just won't leave you alone. Like, he's just so incensed of like, I've got to keep order, and like, I have to do that by killing you. And like, he just follows you through realms. Like, I've got to stop this. Like, I cannot let a single morsel of chaos infect my realm. And like, he's just so intent on like hunting you down. I think that'd be really cool. And yeah, like, I know people don't like Hotaru that much. Again, similar, like I said, potential going to be a very strong word here. I think there's a lot of potential with having Hotaru is kind of like that personification of the Order Realm, where he's just so laser focused on just making sure there is no ounce of chaos in the world, and just having him so focused on that, I think it'd be really cool. And like I said, the potential, and obviously as well, like his whole clash, the whole opposites with Havik, I think those two as like a little like mini rivalry within the story or the game itself would be so cool. Like Havik and Hotaru just order and chaos fighting each other, man, that'd be so sick. Also as well, I just like the design. Like, I know a lot of the designs from the 3D era are kind of like, you know, are very mixed in general, and that's probably putting it lightly. But I've just always loved Hotaru's design. Like, I love the beetle armor type thing and his secondary costume in Deception, where it's like the full armor without the flags. Looks so sick. Like, I think Hotaru is so cool. Like, I've always been a fan of him. I've always loved Order Realm and Chaos Realm and that whole dynamic from Deception. And in my eyes, like, if you have Havik, like, I think it'd be very much a wise choice to have Hotaru as well, because I think with Chaos you need Order, and this, you know, and vice versa. If you have Order, you need Chaos. And I think they're very much an interesting dynamic. And I think one helps the other, basically. It's like if you have Havik and Chaos, you help make Hotaru and Order more interesting, and vice versa. But yeah, very much hope Hotaru comes back. Like I said, I don't really expect it, because like I said, he's not like a massively popular character. And I wouldn't even say popular in general, really. Like, not a lot of people really care about him, but I would totally love him back. So that's my case for Hotaru. I think he'd be so cool to have in the game, and like just the armor in general. It doesn't even have to be Hotaru really, but just bring back the Order Realm and bring back that armor, because it's so cool. It's not worth just leaving a Deception. Yeah, that's my case for that. Like, I really want Havik, Hotaru, Order Realm, and Chaos Realm. I think those things are far too good to leave in a PS2 game. And I still to this day some of the best additions to the whole series. So yeah, I absolutely really want them back.
Ashrah wins. Fatality.
So for number 6, I honestly don't have much to say because, truthfully, I never liked this character for a long time, and my reasoning is honestly like really petty, and I'll get to my reasoning in a bit, don't worry. But Ashrah is such an interesting character in terms of like, but the potential of the concept of Ashrah, what Ashrah is, the whole demon aspect to it. So interesting. I think they could really do something cool with her, and her design's okay. I think as a baseline, like as like a basic like concept, it's okay. Probably not enough to stand out on its own, but if you like add to it a bit more, you could really make it cool. I think the hat is definitely the most like memorable or iconic element of that design. But yeah, I just think Ashrah would be really cool. Like there's only like so many like other like female characters in MK from that era. Like you have like Lai Mei, who I think also would be really cool if they brought back Kira, who's like and Ashrah, and like I honestly don't even like really. Oh, Tanya, of course. I think Tanya would be cool. But yeah, I think kind of like opposite to Kai, but similar in the same way. Is like with Kai, like he didn't really have anything there to begin with, so he's almost like a blank slate of sorts. So you could kind of like really go and do things that you wouldn't really expect. With Ashrah, I think the base concept is decent enough where you could really just expand on it instead of doing something new entirely. So yeah, I absolutely love to see Ashrah back. I think she'd be a really fun addition. She'd be a very surprising pick as well. Like if you did Ashrah, like again for people who'd never played the PS2 games, you could pretty much sell her as a new character, so people who didn't know her can be like, oh, this is sick, who's this character? And then like, oh, this is Ashrah, she's from MK Deception. And the people that know Deception and know that game could be like, oh shit, they're bringing back Ashrah, what a crazy pick, instead of just bringing back the same like MK 1, 2 and 3 characters. But yeah, like I said, I don't have much to really say about Ashrah. Oh, the reason for why I didn't like it. So, like I said when I was talking about Ermac, like ever since Deception, I've loved Ermac. He's been my favourite character for years now. But in MK Deception in Conquest mode, Ashrah had a rivalry with Ermac and wanted to kill him, and I hated her for that. I was really like, nah, you don't hate my boy, like, you're not going to fight my boy. I remember being really annoyed, because I think at one point in Conquest, you have to, like, go from Ermac's style to Ashrah's. I remember hating that so much, because, like, no, I don't want to play her style, man. I want to keep Ermac's. Like, Ermac's is sick. I don't want to play as Ashrah. And, like, it was really, like I said, really petty reason, but I was a kid back then. You know, I was just too much of a fanboy of Ermac to really, like, see differently. But now, you know, now that I'm older, 100% I would love to see something from Ashrah again. And, you know, for NetherRealm to do something new with her and kind of, like, mix her up and expand on what was already there. But yeah, like I said, would love to see her back. I think it'd be really... I think more than anything, it'd be a very exciting choice. Like, it'd be something where it's like, if I was watching a trailer for MK12 and Ashrah showed up, I would lose my shit. Because I would not expect it at all. But, you know, I just think there's something there that they can use to, you know, make something interesting.
Prince Goro.
I do not know you.
Let's get better acquainted.
For number 7, I'm going with a character who honestly doesn't need much of a defense force like I've done with like Havik and Hotaru and Kai, etc. Like, this is a character who's pretty beloved. To be honest, he was very popular in MKX, which is the game he debuted in, and I'm of course talking about Takeda. And more than anything, I just can't get over how baffling of a choice it was in MK11 for Takeda to just be completely absent. He was by far and away, I think, one of the most popular, if not the most popular, of the combat kids that was introduced in MKX. Personally, he's my second favourite. I really like Cassie from that game. Like, she was my favourite after I played MKX. But Takeda was a very close second. I think he's such an interesting take on Scorpion's Apprentice. Like, because obviously when you did Frost in MK Deadly Alliance, she pretty much was a female Sub-Zero, and I have no problem with that. I like Frost a lot, especially in MK Deadly Alliance, and that kind of like era of her. And, you know, the idea or the concept of Scorpion's Apprentice could have gone in a lot of ways, and they could have done something more derivative similar to Frost, where it's like, you know, it's Scorpion but with like a very kind of like this little thing that's different about them. But no, Takeda was completely different, completely unique. I loved him. I thought he was such a fascinating character in terms of gameplay. Like, I loved playing as him. I loved watching him. Like, just watching him move and his animations, I thought were honestly like really good with the whips. Personality, I thought was really great. I liked his relationships with Scorpion, Kenshi, and Jackie. Yeah, like, he's honestly just a really cool character, and like one of the best I think that came out of X. And then they just completely abandoned him in 11, which is just, like I said, it's just baffling. So yeah, honestly, not a lot I can really say about Takeda in this sense. Like, I just think he's a really cool character that deserves to come back in 12 after missing 11 for no real reason. So yeah, that's my case for Takeda. Short and sweet, but I think honestly people know enough about this character to understand why he's on this list. So yeah, that's my case for Takeda, I guess. I just hope he comes back, because he deserves it. So number 8, we have an interesting one, and I think some people are going to be like, really, this character? Why? Like, he's not, underrated or anything. Like, why does he need to come back? Whereas I think other people are going to be like, no, I 100% understand why you've chosen this character for number 8. And, hopefully everybody understands why I chose this character for number 8 after I finish talking about them. But number 8 is Reptile. And now Reptile, personally, I don't think he's underrated at all. I honestly, in a way, think he's a bit overrated. I like Reptile a lot. I really, really do. I think he's a really cool character. The first hidden character in a fighting game, I think, ever. Super cool character. I've always loved the history behind him and the lore and his different designs. But the thing with Reptile is that he's been pretty shitty for a long time now. Like, you could say MK9 was the start of it, but I'd honestly argue MK4 was the start of his decline. I think the thing with Reptile is that, like, I think NetherRealm mainly, but, even Midway, like, they just never really knew what to do with Reptile, like, post MK3. And I think, so many people have different ideas of what they should do with Reptile. Some people want him to go back to being a human ninja. Some people want him to become even more of a lizard. I don't really know exactly where I lie. I'm fine with anything with Reptile. I just don't want him to be where he's at the moment, where he's just a jobber. Like, he just loses. Like, he has no credibility as a fighter, I think, in the lore and, in the fan base. I think people are sick of seeing him as just this complete loser who just snivels and snarls and stands next to the bad guy and then eventually fights and loses against the heroes. Because that's what he's basically been for years now. Like, he's just been a really, like, pathetic kind of, like, sidekick or, like, subordinate to the kind of bigger, more important villains. Now I look at him in MKX and all that, and I just think, like, man, like, you're so pathetic. Like, I hate to say that, because, like I said, I do like Reptile. But I think at the same time, so many people go on about Reptile and, like, oh, Reptile deserves better. And it's like, yeah, he does, but at this point, like, if they're so insistent on making him just this guy who gets his ass kicked in the story every time, someone needs to win a fight, then, like, is it really worth it? It's debatable. I think there's still a chance to save Reptile. I think there's a chance to make him back to what he was in the old days. I don't really know if that necessarily means you have to make him human. I kind of like the fact that Reptile is unique in the sense of, like, he's not just another human ninja. I'm fine with the idea of a human ninja Reptile, but for me, for him to go back to being a human, I think you would need to establish that, like, the human skin is just a decoy, like that there is a lizard underneath. I think that's the way you go back and do human Reptile. Otherwise, I think it'd just be completely pointless because it's just another human looking ninja, except he just spits acid. Honestly, like, I know a lot of people hate the design, but I have no problem with Reptile going more towards the Deadly Alliance era, where he just was completely, like, animalistic in a way. Like, he just looked like a giant lizard. I'm fine with that design. I think that design honestly looked good. I know people hate it, and I understand why, but I have no problem with that. And it's like, to me, it's like they need to pick a side, because at the moment they're in the middle. He's a human lizard. He either needs to be a human or he needs to be a lizard. And I think whichever one they choose, they need to stick with it, because I think at the moment he's just seems so aimless. Like, they don't know what to do with him. Like, just flat out, they don't know what to do with Reptile, and they haven't done for a long time. So I'm putting him in here mainly because I think this is his last chance. I think if Reptile comes back in 12 and they make him cool, then great, you've redeemed Reptile, and just stick with, like, whatever you do, if it works, just stick with that. But if they bring him back and he still sucks and he's still losing fights and he's still this shitty human lizard hybrid, then just scrap him, honestly. Just throw him away and bring him back in like 10 years or 20 years when you want to do actually something different with him. So yeah, that's why Reptile's here, because I feel like, this is his last chance, basically. But it'll be interesting to see what happens regardless. I think Reptile probably has a good chance because he missed 11, but we'll just have to see how it goes. Like I said, if this doesn't work this time, then I honestly don't think there's any real chance of saving the character anytime soon.
Nitara Fatality.
Number 9 is a very interesting one for me as well, because honestly, I don't like this character. I've never really liked this character. I've never understood the appeal of this character. I think most of the people that ask for this character are basically just horn dogs who just want to see another skimpy like female character in the game. Number 9 is Nitara. And honestly, the only reason I'm even including Nitara on this list is because, again, potential. I think there is potential with Nitara and her race of like vampire things. I don't even know the name of the race. But the way I think about Nitara is that I feel like the way you can kind of make her interesting and actually like decent is you kind of go the Devourer route, where Devourer was, you know, she was a completely new race introduced to the series, and they actually like they did interesting things with her. They established what her race is like, what they do, how they procreate, how they eat, how they, you know, move about, and all these things. It was very interesting. I really liked the whole like chitin aspect of Devourer and that whole like exploring this new race that we'd never seen before. And to me, Nitara is like the complete opposite in the sense of like, they just did nothing with this character. They just wanted a sexy girl with vampire wings. And it's just shit. Like, I just don't like it. I hate the design. I think it's so lame. I thought it was lame when I was a kid. I'd never gotten the appeal of this character other than like Awuga. I don't really just, like, if they bring this character back and they do well, not the exact same because they wouldn't, but like if they do something similar with her, where she's back and she's just like a jury type character, where she's just, look how much of a fetish I am, fucking throw them in the bin. I don't want them. I want nothing to do with them. Why did you bring them back? But if they bring them back and they do more of a Devourer route, where they actually try and like establish more about this race and go into the lore and like what this race was like, how they act, how they procreate, how they existed in the realm that they're from. Again, don't even remember what realm these vampire species is from. But if they go that route, then I think there's a lot of potential with Nitara. And that's the only reason she's on this list, because they could do something interesting with her. But like, it's a very fine line for me. It's like if they bring her back and she's just a fetish, then just, it would really annoy me. But potential, the key word for this video. There's something there that I think you could do to make her interesting, but like, I feel like there's a crossroads with this character where it's like you can go in one of two directions. You can just like actually do something interesting with her in the race and establish them that way, or you could just kind of like pander to the horn dog crowd who just want fetishes and feet and shit like that, and then you can go that way, and then it's like, why did you even like bother then? Because you're just wasting a slot on like a blatant fetish, and that's just not interesting to me. So yeah, that's kind of my feelings on Nitara. Like I said, never liked this character, but if they do something interesting with her, there's a potential that I could like her, and that's why she's number 9.
Shujinko wins. Fatality.
And now we're finally at number 10, and honestly I'm kind of mixed on including this character, because while I have reasons of why they're here, which I will explain in a minute, I also very much think that, you know, the opposite of like, I don't think this character really should come back, because I think the way that they were made and designed in the game that they debuted in kind of makes it very hard to include them again in a new game without completely revamping them and basically making them a new character. And I say this because number 10 on my list is Shujinko from MK Deception. Now, Shujinko's here because, honestly, I think there is potential. I think there is something you can do with Shujinko. I always liked him, to be honest, even when I was playing, you know, Conquest as a kid. I know some people kind of hate Shujinko for how much of an idiot he is in the story, and he is. He's absolutely a moron. But at the same time, when this whole kind of like his whole story started, he was a kid, and that's honestly one of the main reasons why I like Shujinko so much, is because you really see his entire growth as a person. You see him as a kid, just eager to be a fighter, and then you see him become an adult, and then, you know, a young adult, and then an old man, and you see him go from, you know, this young plucky kid to someone who just got easily manipulated by the people around him. And I don't blame him. The world of Mortal Kombat is not a fun place to be, in all honesty. Like, there is shit coming from every angle to just ruin your day and just screw you over for their own, you know, nefarious goals. And I don't blame Shujinko for being hoodwinked by Onaga. I think most people probably would have ended up being the same. But, you know, despite all that, I think there's something there with Shujinko. And I think even if you don't make him the main character again, because I think that's probably the easiest way of bringing this character back, is that you just make him the main character again and you just do another, you know, deception type storyline. I don't think that's the best way to go. I don't think Shujinko's really, you know, strong enough to be the main character again. I think that was really a one-time thing with deception. But I think you can have him be a very important character to the overall like main group of heroes, sort of in like a Raiden-ish type role where he's more of like, he just helps out and he just gives advice and he, you know, he talks to the main characters and kind of like, you can have the experiences that he gained through deception and be like, hey, you know, I know what this is like, I know what's going to happen here because I went through a similar thing when I was younger. Because if you play Deception, you'll know Shujinko had a mad life. Like, he went all over the realms. He was in jail in the Order Realm for like 20 years or something. Like, he went through a lot of shit and he has a lot of experience. And I don't know, I think if you wanted to kind of like reintroduce the wider like world of MK again, like in a very kind of like natural way, in terms of like, because for the most part we've only really had like Earthrealm, Outworld, and Netherrealm. We've never really gone beyond those realms like so much in the recent games, and there's more like realms out there than just those 3 same realms. Like, there's a lot more you can do with the world of MK. Like I said earlier with Havik and Hotaru, like the Order Realm and the Chaos Realm alone just have so much you can pull from to make, you know, interesting stories and characters. And I think the best way of like reintroducing that to like new players and people who are kind of like lapsed fans who like played MK 1, 2 and 3 and then didn't play the series after that, and then now they're back because the series is mega popular again. I think Shujinko could be a very interesting way of kind of like getting people up to date with like, hey, there's actually like a more to this world than just, you know, Earthrealm and Outworld and Netherrealm. And yeah, I just think it'd be kind of interesting to have him be a kind of walking guide, I guess. There's just someone there to kind of like be like, hey, you know, if you go to the Netherrealm or you go to the Outworld, there's this thing here. I know because I went there when I was a kid. And I don't know, and this is the thing I was talking about, where it's like, I don't know if that justifies him being playable again. I'd be fine with it, but it's like, you know, you gotta think about other people. Like, when other people want Shujinko back, you know, because the thing is, like, for me personally, I was always like, I don't mind the old man Shujinko design, but I always liked his younger designs more. Like, I think my favorite one is when he's like a middle-aged man, where he's got the long hair. I'll try and have a picture of it up on the screen now. Like, that's my favorite design of Shujinko, and I was always bummed that like you couldn't play as those older versions in the rest of the game. Like, it only plays them when you were in that era of his life while playing Conquest. But I think the old man aspect to it is fine. To be honest, we don't even really have that many like old man fighters. Like, all the old characters usually in MK like are either like 80,000 years old or they have like a younger version, you know. And by old I don't mean like Johnny in MKX and MK11 where he's like slightly, you know, he's got brown hair but he's got like graying sides. Like, no, I'm talking like old man. Like Shujinko in MK Deception is an old man, and we don't really have a lot of them, and I think that could be a very interesting niche for him to fill. But yeah, it's a very interesting one. I don't know if you can really justify Shujinko being there as a cameo, absolutely, but like being playable again, I don't know. That's why I'm very kind of like I'm putting him in. But yeah, that's all I can really come up with Shujinko, to be honest. I'd be interested to see if other people can come up with something else for him. Like, I know he has his fans out there. I've seen a couple on Twitter. I think I follow a couple of people on Twitter who like him a lot. But yeah, that's all I can really say about him, to be honest. And with that wraps up this list. And like I said, I know the clickbait with the title. Like I said, I don't think any of these characters need to be in MK12. For me personally, I think Ermac needs to be in the game for my own, you know, personal needs. But like outside of that, I think these are all characters, like I said, that would be great to see. But I don't think any of them are really needed. I think if I had to pick like 3 characters on this list that I think deserve it the most, I'd say Ermac, Human Smoke, and probably Havik. I think were the 3 that, off the top of my head, I think deserve it the most. If I had to get rid of Ermac for my own, you know, personal biases, I'd go Human Smoke, Havik, and you know what, I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to say Ashrah, because like I said, I think just her being in the game would be so cool, even if she ends up being shit and like, you know, like this character's just kind of boring in general. Just that moment of like, oh wow, they're bringing Ashrah back would be so cool. And I'd love, like, when it comes to fighting games and like rosters, that's my favorite aspect of it, when it's like you see a character that just hasn't been in the game in years. But yeah, I'm going to wrap things up here. Once again, I've gone on for far longer than I wanted to, but you know what, MK12 is happening, we know it's happening now, and I'm excited. I can't wait to see who they're going to bring back. Yeah, just have to see how it goes. I just hope we do, you know, I hope we don't just get the same characters again and again and again. And there's also a ton of characters I could have mentioned on here. It was very tough just narrowing it down to 10, and like, you know, there's so many other characters I could have put on this list that I really wanted to and almost had them on at one point, but, you know, swapped them around because, again, at the same time, while this is a list I stand by, I think, you know, I wanted to make some interesting choices here, which is why characters like Ashrah and Shujinko and Nitara are on here. But there's other characters that, like, are more fan favorites that I would love to see in the game, but, like, it's not like I have to defend them because they have their own fan base, like Cyrax and Sector. Would love for them to come back, but, you know, they're pretty popular characters, and I'm sure there's a good chance they come back anyway. Raiko is a character who's not popular, but I would love to see him come back. I think he's interesting. I could go on, and I'm not, because like I said, I've gone on for far too long. So I'm going to leave things here. When we eventually start getting info for MK12, like trailers and info and character reveals, I'll definitely be covering them on the channel. But yeah, thank you all for watching if you did, and I shall see you all later. Goodbye.
We await your return, warrior.